flood waters sweep through Western Division. Just 2 weeks into the terms and schools closed again. And dengue fever kills 2 people. Very good evening. As this bulletin goes to air, curfew has been imposed in all towns across the Western Division. This includes Nandi Town, Lautoka City and Rakiraki. There is also confirmation that the military will be helping police impose the curfew and keep people and property safe. As of this hour, 11 evacuation centres are currently active in the Western Division. Rakiraki Town was once again at the receiving end of the heavy downpour brought on by the low-pressure system that currently hovers over the country. But while the curfew kicks in at 6 p.m, in Rakiraki, Provincial Administrator Kelepi Kumbunametha ordered the town be shut down at 2 o'clock this afternoon. This was to prevent members of the public from loitering around town as floodwaters continued to rise. By 4 o'clock, the town was inundated with floodwaters again. DISMAC teams from the Provincial Administrator Rakiraki have been dispatched to settlements in low-lying areas. Evacuees are already moving to the 3 evacuation centres that have been opened. For now, these are at Rakiraki Muslim School, Penang Secondary School and Rakiraki Mission School. Roads that have been closed include the access road to Rakiraki Town from the Nangoro Flats, as well as the FSC road from Rakiraki Town to Suva. Just when students in the Western Division were settling into the new school year, bad weather has disrupted classes. Rising floodwaters forced the closure of all Western schools, with some converted overnight into evacuation centres. Apisola Mirambo has more.
Barely 2 weeks into the new school year, and Mother Nature has once again forced the closure of schools in affected areas across the West.
I have returned from the West. There is a lot of rain. Flooding has started in various parts of Nandi and Lautoka, parts of Singatoka. There is also strong winds in Lautoka-Nandi area. We have given the instruction that all the schools of the Western Division remain closed for today, and we will monitor the situation for tomorrow as well.
Evacuation centres have already been opened. These include St. Andrew's Primary School, Nandi College, Nandi Muslim and Sangam SKM College. According to Dr. Lal, on their way down to Suva this morning, he was shocked seeing children playing in flooded areas.
Advice to parents is to keep a close eye on their children. They shouldn't be roaming around in the town. My advice to head teachers and principals, please keep a close eye on the students. If they come to school, they should be sent back home safely. Where parents need to be involved to take the children back, get them.
The Ministry and the Commissioner Western's office will monitor the weather situation closely before deciding on their next course of action to avoid disrupting classes any longer than they have to. Apisola Mirambo, Fiji One News.
Several evacuation centres have been activated in the Western Division. DISMAC is closely monitoring the weather situation, working closely with the Commissioner Western's office to activate its operations. Halite start with the details.
The Disaster Management Office activated its National Emergency Operations Centre last night. With a trough of low pressure moving over the group and continuous rain expected over the next 48 hours, DISMAC has put in place measures to address any disaster that may arise.
It was activated from 6 to 12 o'clock midnight and reactivated this morning. And we are in close coordination with our counterparts in the West with regards to the information and update situation of impending floods.
Tangi Dakambau says preparations for any disaster has been ongoing. DISMAC has also been assessing evacuation centres. However, there haven't been any evacuees so far.
Evacuation centres, our team has been moving around to assessing the evacuation centres. As of this morning, some of the evacuation centres in the Western Division have been opened. And we are sending out information to the general public that these evacuation centres are now open.
The Emergency Operations Centre in the Western Division will assess the situation and make decisions accordingly.
They are the team from hydrology who are looking at the river gauges, the flood gauges. And if it is going above the critical level, at certain point in these gauges, they will send out the warning. to Commissioner Western's office and all those officials down there to start telling the public to move to safer places.
As more rain is expected throughout the country, the general people have been reminded to take the necessary precautions. Khalid Eshtad, Fiji One News.
And in light of the adverse weather conditions, the Fiji Police Force continues to urge members of the public to take all necessary precautionary measures. Spokesperson Anane Soro has called on members of the public to heed weather advisories. Those living in affected areas have been advised to limit movement, and police are calling on parents and guardians to keep close tabs on children. This comes as police have found that children have often gone swimming in flooded areas. Motorists have also been advised to be mindful of slippery road conditions. Meanwhile, the heavy rain has led to the closure of many roads and bridges in the Western Division. In Singatoka, the Nassau, Liri and Kabanangasau roads were all underwater, and several crossings as well were closed to traffic. In Nadi, as many as 13 roads were also closed to traffic. The main causes of this closure were flooded bridges and culverts. Only four-wheel drive vehicles are allowed through Tunalia and the Sambeto roads. In Lautoka, Wakambuli Indian School was one of the schools affected due to the flooded crossings leading to the school. Authorities are monitoring the situation closely and will advise members of the public accordingly. Over in Ba, 2 crossings, 2 roads and a bridge were closed. The Ministry of Information has advised members of the public living in affected areas to be cautious at all times. The Fiji Electricity Authority has cancelled all its planned outages in the Western Division as a result of the adverse weather conditions. However, power outages can be expected. Chief Executive Officer Hasmukh Patel says the heavy downpour has caused faults and hampered FEA's attempts to restore power on time. He adds that all sagging or low-lying power lines are to be treated as live and reported immediately. 2 people have succumbed to dengue fever. This comes in the wake of continuous increase in cases recorded at health facilities around the country. Ravai Vafa'o reports.
2 people have died as a result of dengue fever. That's been confirmed by the Health Ministry.
There's been a report yesterday and then another one this morning of dengue-associated deaths. And I think the diagnosis was one of dengue hemorrhagic syndrome and also one of dengue shock syndrome. So that report is now with the ministry. And yes, that is the scenario that we will get, with this kind of number of cases.
Fiji One News was also informed that a major hospital had run out of dengue kits. However, the ministry was unaware of this.
As I'm aware, well equipped. All the health staff there are knowledgeable about the situation that we have on dengue. So it becomes a surprise when we hear that people are being turned away. Turned away from the hospital is one issue, because hospital is just receiving cases.
Dr. Kamo also adds that the dengue kits are not necessary to diagnose dengue fever.
We have test kits. We're running a little bit low on test kits, but doctors don't really rely on the test kits to make the diagnosis at this stage. For them, it's not. It's very clear that we have an outbreak going. What looks like dengue is almost dengue. We don't really need to rely on the test kits at this stage, at this point in time.
With 1,422 positive cases recorded so far, the ministry cannot do it alone. The public need to seriously take heed and try to read mosquito breeding grounds.
How quickly to our community has responded in terms of early presentations, and also how our clinicians are managing it. The thing is that we can't be complacent. We need to present when it is needed.
The Central Eastern Division have recorded 1,203 cases so far, with 165 cases in the west and 54 cases in the north. Reviver for all, Fiji One News.
Still to come tonight, minimum wage set at $2. And works at Central Bank stopped. Hello again. In a landmark move today, the state has set the national minimum wage to $2 per hour. This will apply for the first time to those outside the 10 wages councils. The move is expected to bring joy to those who for many years have not been officially recognized as part of cash employment.
The nation's minimum wage has now been set at $2 an hour. It's a move government says is aimed at those workers in our informal sectors.
There are a lot of people in Fiji who fall outside of those sectors. For instance, people who babysitters, who look after babies, people who work in agriculture. So there's a lot of people in Fiji in which we don't have any control over their wages. So historically, Cabinet in its meeting yesterday has for the first time announced a national minimum wage for which no other wage is allowed to fall under.
With the new minimum wage, those in our informal sectors will now have a reason to smile.
The average at the moment in the agricultural sector is around $52 per week. So for those in that sector, their wage will go from $52 per week to $90 per week.
The decision to impose the new $2 an hour rate comes after extensive surveys and consultations with close to 10,000 workers across the country.
The vision of this government is very simple. The vision of this government is to build a better Fiji. That means a better Fiji for people who are running business, people who are employed in good jobs like you and me, and also people right at the very margins of society, those at the very bottom. So we need to be able to build a better life for them by making sure that they get a wage which allows them to have a better life.
With the basic needs poverty line income for a 4-member family at $186, Wilson Mate is confident this new rate will improve things for those below the poverty line.
Government has put in a lot of assistance for people at the bottom. You have bus fare for school children, you have now free education, you have food vouchers for people. All of this assistance, which is called in the economy, it's social wage. So while your wage might be limited, government has also provided other things that allows that basically boosts the chance of people looking after themselves and it boosts the income in an indirect way.
The new minimum wage will come into effect next month. A review will be done after a year to see if adjustments need to be made. Reviver for all, Fiji One News.
The Ministry of Labour also responded to questions on what happens to companies already paying above the new minimum wage.
Those that are already paying above, they should stay there or pay more. If you are making more profits, if you're being more productive, you need to reward your employees. Right? How do you reward your employees? By giving them more. And if you reward your employees by giving them more, showing that you care for them, it's more than likely that these employees will give you more of their effort. Right? They will work harder for you to make more money for the company.
The Minister states this should not stop businesses in the formal sector from paying what their employees deserve.
Good companies, good employers will make sure that they reward their employees, because their employees are the greatest asset of any company. Company must look after them.
Police are searching for a man who escaped from police custody yesterday morning in Suva. 38-year-old Ropate Vesindrao is wanted for more than 50 cases of theft, but has been avoiding court. He was earlier arrested in Levuka at the weekend for breaching his warrant. Those with information of his whereabouts are requested to contact their nearest police station or call 917. Renovation works currently in progress at the Reserve Bank of Fiji was stopped this morning. OHS inspectors carrying out inspection at the worksite ordered all renovations to stop, pending further consultations with the subcontractors. As Absalom Mirambo reports, works will only be stopped if there are risks involved.
Minister for Labour Chone Usamate did not mince his words while explaining the ministry's role. This was for the benefit of renovation works at the Reserve Bank of Fiji that came to a standstill this morning.
That's very critical for us is that any person who works in Fiji is entitled to work in a workplace that is safe and productive. So I'm not aware of what's happening at the Reserve Bank, but if a workplace is unsafe, then the OHS will try to work together with that employer to improve the safety of that place. And if necessary, it might have to put a stop to work. That's what might have happened in this case.
As the Minister said, we have rules, and this covered under the OHS Act and regulations. So there are certain standards for them to comply with, like the code of practice for scaffolding, very specific. And basically, as the Minister said, that the first part of the inspector's work is basically to work with them to solve the problem. Our approach is to sustainable solution in the long run.
Permanent Secretary Taito Wanga says such work are assessed according to risks involved.
But in immediate threat situation under Section 25 of the Health and Safety Work Act, which are life-threatening, the inspector have got a risk assessment tool, methodology, international benchmark. They don't go and decide why. They use the risk assessment tool. They identify the hazard, they provide the risk assessment before they make a decision. So it's a scientific approach.
Wanga says the assessment approach is based on an international model to protect OHS inspectors from being challenged in court.
Okay, so in that case, if they stop it, that means the risk is too high and it constitutes an immediate threat to life, whether life for workers, also life for the public, who is a public area. Because OHS also have a duty of care for others, non-workers.
According to Wanga, the bottom line is to prevent disruptions to normal business.
And then they work together, as I said, quickly, because you don't want a lot of downtime, because business has to move. So that's where the role of the inspector, proactive role, comes in. If it's not life-threatening, they will not stop it down. They just work together and remedy. They normally give them an improvement notice time frame if it's not life-threatening. So if it's not life-threatening, they go through the procedures, they give the what we call improvement notice. And based on the risk, they give the time frame.
Apisalome Rambo, Fiji One News.
A man who was involved in an accident earlier this week at Shalimar Street passed away at the Colonial War Memorial Hospital this morning. Police spokesperson Anane Soro said the post-mortem examination will be conducted to confirm the cause of death. Meanwhile, the driver of the truck alleged to have caused the accident will be brought in again for questioning. The remaining passengers remain admitted in hospital in critical condition. Government development in the maritime areas will be set in motion soon following the arrival of 2 new landing crafts. Permanent Secretary Commander Francis Keane confirmed that the 2 crafts have already arrived in PNG. The 2 landing crafts were purchased after government approval of $9 million to the shipping services after last year's budget.
It's a new landing craft, newly built, was launched in June of 2014. Built according to international classification standards under NK, and it will be a workhorse for government shipping services to support the MV Watulau, the only landing craft that government shipping services has.
Currently, government shipping only has Vatulawa as its landing craft, and the arrival of these 2 are timely to developing infrastructure in the maritime areas.
As you know, this government is heavily involved in infrastructural development out in the maritime islands, and these vessels come in very handy for the transportation of construction materials to support these infrastructure developments out in many of rural and maritime areas.
The Ministry of Women, Social Welfare and Poverty Alleviation hopes to continue with its momentum of providing assistance to the less fortunate this year. The ministry today launched its annual corporate plan, outlining a number of activities for the year. Much of the focus has been placed on child welfare and empowering women.
We have a very, we seek to reflect more structured and targeted approach in this respect in assisting our rural women to attain empowerment status with specifically measured indicators.
The ministry will also, for the first time, organize a Women's Expo in August this year.
The theme for this particular one is the Rural Women's Designer Awards. And this is under process at the moment. The wheels of organization has started rolling, and we anticipate that this is going to be a major activity of the ministry.
Stay with us, we have Pacific News coming up. The Pacific heavy dependence on donor aid remains a major worry for the World Bank. According to the World Bank, overseas development assistance, or ODA, to the Pacific amounts to $469 per capita, compared to just $64 in Caribbean small states and $54 in sub-Saharan Africa. This has prompted calls from Pacific development experts for greater political will for locally driven self-sustaining economic growth and development. The Vanuatu-based Pacific Institute of Public Policy says international development cooperation requires a major facelift that begs support from traditional and non-traditional donors. Major donors to the region include Australia, New Zealand, the European Union, United States, France and Japan, with a growing presence of China. Now remember, you can view tonight's Fiji One News Bulletin on our website at www.fijione.tv. You can also watch previous news bulletins as well as our current affairs, business and sports shows. You can also get news headlines directly to your mobile phones. To subscribe, just text SUB space FTV News to 777 and you can get your news and sports headlines via SMS. You have until the end of this month to sign up and enjoy a free subscription. From February 2nd, charges will apply. You can view our terms and conditions on our website. In business tonight, Punjab's announced the winner of its joint Fonterra Win with Anchor and Chesdale promotion yesterday. The winners were announced by the Commissioner Western, Commander Choeli Thawaki, and witnessed by the Divisional Police Commander Western. Also on hand were the executive of the company. The event took place at the Ocean Soaps factory in Navutu outside Lautoka yesterday.
From all over Fiji. For Fonterra, we had a couple of promotions over the last 10 to 15 years, but our association with Fonterra is for the last 50 years. And Fonterra, as you know, is one of the biggest companies, is the largest company, is indeed the largest company in New Zealand.
Lauding the efforts of the local manufacturing and retail outlet giants not only in Fiji but in the Pacific, Commander Thawaki said the group must be acknowledged for its work in giving back to the community.
Unfortunately, we cannot be winners, but our congratulations to the winners, that the people that have won today. It's altogether the value of the promotion comes to more than 60,000. For us, that's a lot.
Westpac Bank last night celebrated the upcoming Chinese Year in style. The bank chose to celebrate this with a special occasion with its local Chinese customers and guests. Reserve Bank Governor Barry Whiteside was on hand to do the honors for the traditional lion dance. Westpac's Fiji head Adrian Hughes says as the country's oldest bank, dating back over a century, they also have a very long association with Fiji's local Chinese community. Last night's event was also attended by the Chinese and American ambassadors to Fiji. Westpac was also voted recently as the world's most sustainable organization. We go to sports now with Myron, and travel sanctions not easy anymore for Fiji Sevens.
Well, really, for the first time ever, our players with military connections have been permitted to enter New Zealand and play rugby. That's coming up. Also in sports tonight, Krishna named Striker of the Decade. And hockey to fight for spot for Youth Olympics.